There is a lot of groundwork research, the foundation of a novel. I really find that I have to understand the period and how
Mm.
I'm thinking. But at the same time, I don't want my historical fiction to feel like I'm taking readers through a museum or
No.
a history lesson or anything like that. I really want my historical fiction to be stuff that people can connect to
Mm.
today and see themselves in and see the connections between humans then and humans now.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rights for Women. It is Saturday, July 24, 25, I believe, something like that. As I'm recording this, the podcast is a little late coming out this week because I've been very busy catching up on everything since I've come back from my trip overseas. And I've also been very busy doing fiction feedback for Writing New South Wales. So the podcast is coming out a couple of days late, but I had the most amazing chat with Belinda Alexandra, and I'm really excited to be bringing you that conversation with Belinda in this episode. I am literally fresh back this afternoon from the fabulous South Coast Writers Festival, which was held at the Rural Library and Community Centre, very local for me, and I was very excited to be on a panel or in a session of kind of local South Coast authors, which was basically myself and Courtney Pepinell. Courtney is a poet and has had huge success, international success with her poetry books for the last 10 years or so. And she has recently launched into writing fiction. Her novel, The Last Poem, I'm currently reading. Haven't actually got it here in my hands to show you, but highly recommend this beautiful, soft, gentle book about grief and life and love and loss, all the things that I love reading and writing about, called The Last Poem. And I'm very excited after talking with Courtney today. We were in conversation with Meredith Jaffe, who is the facilitator. Meredith, an old buddy of mine, and of course, a former Rights for Women host, who has also a new book out, which I'm going to talk to you about in a little minute. So Courtney has agreed to be on the podcast, and I'm really excited to be bringing you her story down the track of her kind of entry into the writing world. It's quite an interesting journey that Courtney has had as she has launched her poetry, self-published it, and then was on the international stage and now is a novelist. So can't wait to talk to Courtney very soon on Rights for Women. First of all, a shout out to everybody on Substack who is following along with the Main Character Deep Dive Writing Challenge. It's a 30-day writing prompt where I am sending out short writing exercises. I'm advising people to set the timer for 15 minutes or longer. If you've got half an hour, great. But it's all about getting to know your main character, or you can adapt it and use it for any character, really. So the first 5 days of that were open to all Substack subscribers, all Rights for Women followers. And from here on in, from day 6 to day 30, it's open to paid subscribers as one of the bonuses that I'm offering on the Rights for Women Substack. I thought I'm going to be doing it, trying to investigate and explore a new character. So I thought I may as well invite everybody to join me in that. And I've had some great feedback. People are enjoying that process. And of course, you can always save the prompts and do it later if you don't have time on the day. Although, as we know, a regular writing practice is a very good thing to cultivate. Shout out to everybody who has been playing along with that. If you'd like to subscribe, it's only $7 a month to subscribe to Rights for Women. You get to do this challenge. I am going to be having other challenges down the track. There's some bi-monthly write-ins. We have our next write-in this Thursday at 7 p.m. where we do a writing sprint for an hour and then have a writing chat, and they're always so much fun. And I always come away feeling really inspired by those chats. And you also have the opportunity to submit 3,000 words. I will give you written feedback and the video of me talking about that feedback, talking through the excerpt, which you submit anonymously. Nobody knows it's you. That goes out to all paid subscribers, so they can hopefully learn something from that too. And then, of course, there is each episode that comes out, there's a short extra additional episode, usually around 15 minutes or so. So I reckon that's bang for your buck, guys, for $7 a month. Thank you for all of those people who are supporting the podcast through the paid Substack feature, and hope that you will join us on the writing challenge if you haven't done so already. I haven't really got any personal writing news to report other than I'm playing around with character and thinking about what's going to be coming next. Excited that Because Your Mind will be coming out in ebook in October. And I thought I would take this opportunity to tell you about some new books that I've picked up from the post office this week. First of all, The Woman in the Sealskin by Lauren Keegan. I absolutely loved Lauren's last book, All the Bees in the Hollow, which was her debut fiction. So I'm really excited to read this book. I love anything that remotely connects me to Women Who Run with the Wolves or to female-based mythology type, archetypal type books. This one, Maylee grew up hearing tales of Selkies, shape-shifting women who shed their sealskins to seduce fishermen on the Orkney shores. That's the story of how her parents met, and it must be true because one day her mother slipped into the sea and was never seen again. That's the beginning of the blurb, and I am actually really excited. I'm going to be talking to Lauren at Wollongong Library on the 7th of August, so I'll put that in the show notes, and if you'd like to join us at Wollongong Library, I know that Lauren would love to have you there, and I'd love to see you there. Look out for The Woman in the Sealskin. I know that is going to be another beautiful story from Lauren. I think I talked about this book in the last episode, An Ocean and a Day, but I'm just holding this one up because when I spoke about Hannah Ritchell's memoir in the last episode, I was listening to it on audio. It's an amazing audiobook narrated by Hannah herself about the loss of her husband, Matt Ritchell, in a surfing accident in 2014 and how Hannah coped with the grief, her grieving process. But I had the pleasure of seeing Hannah in conversation with Catherine Hayman on Thursday night at the Mossman Club, which was run by Three Sparrows Bookshop. And I just wanted to show you, if you're looking at this on screen or on YouTube, this absolutely beautiful cover with all this gold foil and just the whole ocean effect of that. And it's also replicated in the opening page there. And Hannah is also coming on the podcast. So I'm going to be talking to Hannah in a couple of weeks about the writing of this memoir, which I'm sure is going to be a very illuminating chat. Just Hannah is so eloquent talking about this whole thing, and I highly recommend this book. Kind of gird yourself for it. It is obviously harrowing in places, heartbreaking, but also absolutely beautiful. And just to watch the process of Hannah coming to terms with her loss to some extent and writing about it. I'm really excited to talk to Hannah about that whole process and how she got through the writing of that book in a couple of weeks. This one, of course, I had to grab too. Another beautiful looking book, Circle of Wonders by Catherine Hayman. Catherine is an absolutely divine writer. Here's a little bit of the blurb. Love, when chosen in spite of everything, is its own kind of wonder. Ronnie is running out of time. As cancer claims her body, she begins a book of wonders, capturing the small, luminous moments she once overlooked. It's a final gift to the people she loves, and completing it means reckoning with both the flawed life she has lived and the fractured family she's about to leave behind. You can see there's a theme in these books, the sorts of stories that I'm actually attracted to. And even though they're about loss, there is so much positivity in these sorts of stories because they're about finding the moments of joy. And the moments of joy, of course, meaning that much more in the face of loss. So I'm really excited to read that as well, Circle of Wonders. Just gorgeous covers, absolutely stunning. Something in a completely different vein popped into my postbox yesterday, She Lied First by Danuka McKenzie. Danuka is a friend of the podcast. She's been on a number of times, and I'm excited that she has a new book out. Of course, Danuka writes fabulous crime fiction. And here we go with a bit of the blurb. Sisters make the best flatmates, except when they are both keeping terrible secrets. Devika is living her best life, moving out of home in her final year of university, close to the beach and away from her mother. Independent and self-sufficient, just like Kalyani, there's just one awful secret that Kal can never find out about. A complex, suspenseful, mind-bending story of lies, secrets and betrayal. So watch out for that one. Great to dip your toe in if you haven't tried any of Danuka's books, and I'm sure that you will love it. And again, another fabulous cover. And then, of course, this lovely cover as well, The Importance of Being Delia, in a completely different vein. Meredith Jaffe has written this story, which I know is getting fantastic reviews. I'm very excited to start reading very soon. Will curiosity kill the cat sitter? For more than 30 years, Delia Watson was the silent engine behind her husband Charlie's glittering music career, the perfect wife, the reliable rock. Now retired, she's ready for leisure. The universe, however, has other plans. So this book is all about reclaiming yourself, reclaiming your time, taking back control of your life at that midlife and going into later life point. And I know Meredith had a lot of fun writing this book, and she's out and about talking about it. So watch out for events that Meredith is appearing at in a whole lot of different libraries around the place. And I'll tell you a bit more about this book when I actually get to read it, but I'm very excited to do that. Now, let me tell you a little bit about today's guest, Belinda Alexandra. Belinda Alexandra is the author of 12 best-selling novels, a memoir, Emboldened, and a book about the history of women and cats. Belinda is a huge cat lover. We didn't actually get on to talking about her cats. I'll have to have her on again. Her latest novel, The Italian Correspondent, was published in April this year, and I absolutely devoured The Italian Correspondent. It was one of those books that I picked up and started reading, and from the very first page, I just literally couldn't put it down. I was very excited every time it got dark and I was able to go to bed and actually start reading again because I didn't have a lot of time to read during the day. Her books have been published around the world, including the United States, Spain, France, Germany, the UK, Turkey, Hungary, and Poland. Belinda is a stalwart of the Australian writing community. She has the fabulous Book Queens Facebook group with Jane Tara, where they have monthly, I think it is, book reviews and discussions. And she also has another great book out, which I haven't got a copy of here to show you, but it's called The Feel Good Journal. And if you are a paid Rights for Women Substack subscriber, Belinda and I do talk about everything behind the Feel Good Journal and all of Belinda's wisdom about, and comes from years and years of experience as a writer. She had her first book, White Gardenia, published in 2002. So she is a wealth of experience, and we talk about the writing process and how she gets herself ready for writing and the inspiration behind the Feel Good Journal. A lot of that comes up in the bonus ep this week. There is so much writing goodness in this episode with Belinda. I really enjoyed the chat, and she's someone that I could just chat to for hours and hours, as you'll find out when you listen to this episode. So grab a cup of coffee, grab a tea, grab a juice, whatever it is that you love to do when you're listening to Rights for Women. Pop in your earpods, pop on your headphones, go for a walk. But I hope you enjoyed this chat with Belinda Alexandra as much as I did. So, Belinda Alexandra, welcome to the Rights for Women Convo Couch.
I'm so excited to be here, Pamela. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, I don't know how you've escaped me for the last, how many years I've been doing this, 9 years or something. We were just chatting off air, and I loved The Italian Correspondent and really wanted to chat to you about that, as well as all your wealth of writing experience that I'm sure you've got a lot to share.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So let's go right back. When I was looking on your website, I was really interested in your bio, where you talked about your parents and the kind of impact that they had on your love of storytelling. Could you tell us about that and how your love of storytelling, where it started and then how it evolved as you
Yeah.
grew?
Yeah. Look, I think with the kind of parents I had, I probably couldn't avoid being a storyteller. My mother just had such a great exotic background. She was born in Harbin, but grew up in Shanghai in China. She was a white Russian, and
Okay.
my grandfather had fled Russia on horseback after the revolution.
Wow.
And met my grandmother, whose parents were working on the Trans-Siberian Railway, and my mum was born in just such a era where so much happened. And I just remember her stories were quite incredible because I grew up in safe Sydney,
Yeah.
and I had a mother that could speak 5
Oh,
languages,
wow.
and we'd go to Chinatown and she could read all the signs in Mandarin. And I thought, this mother isn't like other mothers.
Yeah.
It's just magical. But she had this sepia photo album. It was one of the few things to survive because she'd had to flee so many times, so many countries. She fled China with her mother on a pirate ship, basically, and they were shot by the communists and then they were
Oh my
sinking and the
God.
Americans saved them. So it was just story after story. So she was a fabulous storyteller as well. But then on the other hand, I had my father who grew up in Australia and had been a volunteer lifesaver on Bondi Beach and very much the Australian larrikin, had all those kind of stories about early Sydney and all the escapades that he got up to. And yeah, if you're going to talk about your day at school, you were going to have to make sure it was as entertaining and as exciting as possible to compete with two parents like that. So I think to be heard, I just became good at telling a story and good at holding attention.
That's amazing. Oh, wow. Those stories from your mother in particular must have been just mesmerizing.
Yeah, they were surreal. I just love them. One that's really stuck with me is her house, her family home. The Japanese invaded China and her house was commandeered by a Japanese general. And normally they would kick the families out. But because he had a young son, he saw my mother, who was only about 5 or 6, as an ideal playmate for his little
Ah,
son. But because the son was a target for terrorists, they called them terrorists, but it was actually just the Chinese resistance. They used to send my mother and this little boy out to play in the park, surrounded by soldiers with machine guns. So these two little children would play on swings and play make believe with each other,
yeah.
just surrounded by Japanese soldiers.
Mhm.
And to me, it's just those stories are just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really far beyond my any experience I've had in Australia, but
Yeah.
it really just gave me an understanding of what war is, what conflict is. So yeah, it definitely influenced me.
And probably a curiosity about other places too, I imagine. Hearing stories from places that were so radically different to where you were growing up.
Yeah. Look, my father was also a very interesting man. He was very eccentric but in very intelligent, and he seemed to always collect really interesting people. So I remember he was the chief engineer with the health department in
Okay.
New South Wales, and he always had interesting people working for him, like scientists studying Legionella's disease and
Yeah.
all these things. And they used to come over and give us slideshows. Do you remember slideshows?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the family slideshow.
There would always be some interesting character giving my brothers and I some slideshow, either on some exotic travel that they made. I remember one guy who was obviously a super intellectual had come back from Egypt and he came to our house and he cooked us Egyptian food and he showed us a slideshow of all his
Oh,
travels. But then there were other things like slideshows of the sewage plant. Something like that.
great.
It was a bit unbearable. But my father was working on environmental issues like way back before people were really talking about it
Yeah.
and renewables and things. And one of the renewables was methane gas from the
Okay.
sewage works being used to power electricity
Yeah.
generators. And I remember as a teenager wanting to be terribly cool with a bunch of teenage girls that were over at my place and we're all doing each other's hair and doing each other's makeup. And my father walks in and he goes, "Would everyone like to go on a tour of the sewage plant?" Like,
Thanks, Dad.
but that was the last thing we wanted to do. So yeah, it was a very interesting childhood with two very interesting parents.
Have you found that over the years as you've been writing that you've drawn on some of those stories or memories that your parents had?
Yeah, look, I think that they left me with a wealth of stories
Mm,
to tell. They were so interesting and just so different. Um,
yeah. And were they readers, Belinda? Were they your parents big
my
readers?
my mother was definitely. She loved poetry
Mm,
and she loved novels. My dad, no. My dad actually never read any of my books, but because he just didn't have that brain. He had a different sort of brain.
Yeah.
But very technical brain, not an imaginative brain. But he was my biggest marketer because all the local booksellers would say, "Oh, we know your dad's been in because your books are all on the top shelf." So he was very proud of me, but he'd actually never read any of my books. But he used to quite often walk around with a copy of one.
That's so lovely.
Yeah.
And what about your mum? Did she read them?
She did. She passed away just when I had finished Wild Lavender.
Okay.
And I actually have a really special note from her because the day she died, she'd actually finished reading the advanced copy. And she left me this beautiful note of how proud she was of me and how much she loved my stories.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. So every time I go through those writer's doubts about myself, I pull out that card and read it again.
Oh, what a special thing to have from
Yeah,
you.
it was.
That's beautiful. So from that kind of childhood love of listening to stories and being immersed in the different worlds and places, how do you think your own love of storytelling grew as you became older? Did you write as a teenager, or was it not till you were older that you started actually writing fiction?
I actually was writing since I was a child because I had a big imagination. And I think my mother knew that a child with a big imagination can be a dangerous thing if you don't keep them occupied. And so she used to buy me little exercise books. And as soon as I could write, she would encourage me to write down stories. And so my first stories were all about my cat Snuggy because I had very limited life experience. And he was my obsession. So I was pretty much always writing, but I think where I really came into my own was you're Gen X, aren't you as well, Pamela?
I'm early 60s.
Oh, okay. Yes. So you're Gen X. And I think that we might be the last generation of the great travelers. Because when we traveled, we didn't have instant access to home.
Yes.
We didn't have pictures that we could immediately send.
Yeah.
And so when we went, we really went. And sometimes we weren't heard of months at a time.
Exactly.
And if you could find an internet cafe, it had to be in a capital city somewhere. And so I had all these letters that I wrote my mother, and it sounds so Jane Austen now to tell people that. But I actually have this record of letters that I was writing to my mum about my travels.
Yeah.
And I can see my personality in them as well.
Oh, lovely.
And recently, one of my friends discovered in his attic when his father passed away and he was going through the family home, letters that we'd written to each other as well, all about my travels and how I was absorbing things.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so different to feeling that almost performance that people have to do with taking photographs of themselves and selfies. It was really engaging with each culture.
Yeah. And you couldn't just pick up a phone and ring either. I used to ring probably maybe once every couple of months, reverse charges.
Yeah, reverse charges.
On the phone. And actually the same thing with me. I wrote aerograms. And I don't even know if people know what aerograms are now, but you basically just the postage was included in a bit of paper and you folded it 3 times.
And it was very light paper.
Very light, so it didn't cost much. And funnily enough, my mum too, when she passed away, we found she'd kept all the aerograms that I'd written to her when I was younger and travelling. And I haven't actually read them yet, but I've got them there and I thought, yeah, that'll be really interesting reading.
Yeah, it is. You hear your young voice.
Yeah.
But also, we didn't have discount air tickets. So when you left this little island, you basically just had to keep going. So many of us were gone for 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And when we returned, we were different. We'd changed.
Yeah.
We'd grown, become more confident, more courageous. Thank goodness our parents weren't tracking us with their GPS.
That's right.
The dumb things that we got up to. But if you spent any time in Europe, you came back more glamorous and more cultured.
That's right.
everyone that had stayed at home. And he had no guidance system except those big, bulky, Lonely Planet guides and maybe
Yeah.
some German tourists that you met along the way who knew where to go. And I think I look at all that adventure and that still informs my
Mm.
writing. And the people I met I think Veronica Gold is probably a character born of all that travel and the
Okay. Yeah.
interesting people that I've met. So all these years later, like 20 years later, I'm still dining out on all of this great travel.
All that stuff just stays there, doesn't it? Sometimes we can't consciously access those memories and experiences, but that's the beauty of writing, isn't it? Is sometimes that when you sit down and you actually get into that flow state and you immerse yourself in the story, you can tap into all that
Yes.
subconscious stuff that's hidden away up there.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. And so when did you actually pen your first novel?
So my first novel I actually wrote when I was at university. I went to university in California. And up until then, like I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't have any role models. Australia was really different then. If I met any writers, they were usually male.
Yeah.
And so there weren't a lot of female role models. And also, people would say you need a serious job, and writing's not
Yeah.
a serious job. So I had initially worked in things like publicity and advertising, writing copy and releases. So it was writing, but it was not the writing I wanted to do. But I went to university in California, and our American friends, God bless them, they always believe in dreams. And
Yeah.
so they would say, but you got to go for your dream. And, and so I decided, okay, I will. And I wrote, my first book was cheap lit and it involved a lot of my travels and so on. And so it went to publishers. I got a literary agent and it went to publishers, but it actually got rejected by every publisher.
Was that here in Australia?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was because at the time I was trying to get published. I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember grunge fiction and how big it was? So train spotting
Oh,
and
yeah.
whole era.
Yeah.
And so it was basically about people vomiting, inner
Yeah.
city people vomiting on
And
each
being
other's
revolting.
shoes
Yeah.
and taking drugs
Yeah.
and being drunk. And I didn't relate to that at all. And also, a lot of the time, it was people with another profile were getting
Okay.
published. So the marketing department would say, who is this person? They're not a supermodel. They're not a whatever, pop singer. And so marketing was getting tied to that a lot.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't fitting into either of those molds. And I think after a while, people realized that the best writers are actually writers, not necessarily pop stars and models. So that passed, and I was working on my first book, White Gardenia, which was inspired by my mum's family history. And that actually got auctioned between all the publishers that had rejected me the
Wow.
first time
So
around.
you went from one extreme to the other in
Yeah,
terms of the publication
yeah,
process.
I
Yeah.
did. I had to reinvent my self-image of myself as a person that was always rejected to a
Right.
person that suddenly was. I got rejected for about 10 years. Everything that I wrote was rejected, whether it was
Wow.
editorial letters, poetry, articles, books. It just, yeah, it all got rejected.
How did you maintain your kind of optimism that you would be published one day? And how did you deal with those rejections at the time?
Oh, it was painful. They were really painful because you're younger and then
Mm.
any sort of failure just feels soul destroying. Whereas now, when you get older, life has beaten you around the bush.
True.
You accept it a bit better or you get over it faster. But when you're younger, it's absolutely tragic. And I don't think that I actually felt optimistic. Isn't that strange? Somehow I knew that I had to keep going and I
Right.
had perseverance. But I can't really say I was one of those people that just said, I know one day I'll be published and everyone will be sorry that they rejected me. I didn't have that. I don't really know what kept me going, except I just couldn't stop.
Yeah. You had that perseverance probably in your nature, and
Or maybe a little Capricorn, just a little goat that keeps going despite the high winds and the and climate or whatever. But also I met one author who'd had 10 books rejected before he got published. And I said, what kept you going? And he said, the rejection letters got longer. I thought, okay, well, 10 books, I'm not quite at 10 books. And if he can keep going, I'll keep going.
almost like a challenge.
Yeah.
So how old were you when White Gardenia was published?
So I was in my late 20s.
Okay, so still pretty young. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was old because
At the time, but looking back.
Yeah, looking back, I was a little whippersnipper, but I think at that stage, also everyone thought they should be highly successful. I guess it's still that way for people in their 20s. They think they should have it all figured out by the time they're 21. But it was funny with writing because it is a career that values age. And I remember even turning 40 and being described as a young writer.
Yeah.
And I thought there's only two places where you get described as young in your 40s, and that's writing and ballroom dancing. So that was very good. I'd go to my ballroom dance classes and the average age would be 70 plus. So you were always considered really
Always young. Yeah. So how was that experience of then having that first book published after all those rejections? And then did you feel at that point, oh, yes, now I've made it, I'm in the door and I'm set for life type thing? Did you have that feeling, or was it something different for you?
No, I don't think I've ever had that. No, I don't think even now I have that. I think, and maybe that's not a bad thing because it keeps me humble and constantly working. But I think writing, it's a very insecure profession because it's like anything, like acting. You can be the thing of the moment, but you have to just keep delivering high quality work and you have to reinvent yourself a lot. Maybe there's some writers who just are in that position where they can have that level of confidence, but I never really developed it. I remember actually, it was funny, my very first book signing, looking at people being nervous about approaching me to get their book signed. And I would be thinking, I'm more nervous than you. So, I don't really think of myself as somebody that you should be frightened of approaching.
I don't think you're very scary.
But I still have a little bit of imposter syndrome, as even now, I just think, oh, yeah, I guess I sometimes wonder, am I a real writer? And I don't really know why. I think writers probably have a very strong inner critic all the time.
Yeah.
And so I've never really settled into walking into the room saying I'm a star.
I think that it does keep us on our toes. And I think also that you're saying about the inner critic, we have to have a certain amount of inner critic, don't we, for revisions and things like that, to be able to see the flaws in our own work. So I guess that then also translates into that sense of insecurity, which, I don't know. Yeah, I'm the same as you. It never seems to go away. Doesn't matter how long you've been writing for.
It doesn't. You learn to handle it better.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, I know that you're telling me this is crap and I know it's crap, but I'm going to fix it. And the more I work on it, the better it's going to get, because that's what's always happened. But I just would never say I have that feeling of security. I think there's a point in every book. That's the dip where you think, oh, this isn't working. It started off so well and now I'm stuck in the middle and my plan isn't working and my characters aren't cooperating. But you just learn that you have to push through it. There's no other option if you want to write the book.
I want to get on to talking about your writing process in a little bit more detail in a while, Belinda, but you're now 12 books, I think, down the track from White Gardenia. Is that correct? You've had 12 books published. And your latest book, The Italian Correspondent, came out earlier this year, and it's absolutely fabulous. Anybody listening, if you haven't read it yet, make sure you grab a copy and put it at the top of your pile, because it was one of those books I just couldn't put down. So can you tell us a little bit about that and where the idea for the story came from?
Yeah, so the Italian Correspondent is set in 1951, so post-war Italy, but it's the era when Italy was reinventing itself from fascism to fashion and becoming the most glamorous nation in Europe. And the main character, Veronica Gold, is a former war correspondent, and she's in Italy as the reporter for Vogue magazine. And she's really trying to forget the terrible things that she saw during the war. But three men come into her life, and as men always do, they complicate things. But she's got her ex-husband, a diplomat, Lyle Cooper. She has a very dishy archaeologist named Marcello Fabri, who's
Yes,
on the
love
side.
Marcello.
Okay. And a very dashing Italian count. But when one of the men is murdered, her life becomes very complicated, and she finds herself in a world of spies and lies and on a mission to save the world.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I don't read exclusively historical fiction, but I do read a lot. And the thing that always strikes me about it, and what struck me when I was reading The Italian Correspondent, is obviously there's a lot of fact in there in terms of, you were saying about the time frame and it being, dealing with the fascism side of things in Italy and the post-war and all of that sort of stuff. But the level of research that you must have to do, and then to be able to combine that then with these kind of fictional characters and create this whole new kind of world, it really blows my mind.
Yeah, it blows my mind quite frequently as well. Yeah, look, I do, because I guess my family history, I am fascinated by history and how world events can change people's lives. So that's a real interest to me. But yeah, there is a lot of groundwork research, the foundation of a novel. I really find that I have to understand the period and how I'm thinking. But at the same time, I don't want my historical fiction to feel like I'm taking readers through a museum
No.
or a history lesson or anything like that. I really want my historical fiction to be stuff that people can connect to today and see themselves in and see the connections between humans then and humans now. That's what I aim for.
And so do you start with the research, Belinda, or do you start with the story and then weave the research through and stop and start with your research? How does that work for you?
I think everything comes, it doesn't come in a neat package. It comes in a very messy package, and I have to sort through it. Sometimes the character idea will come to me. Usually I do have an idea of a time period that I want to write about, something that I'm interested in exploring. And I had written Tuscan Rose, which was set in Italy during the Second World War. So it was very much about the partisans in Italy. And this sort of is the next period after, when Italy is really damaged after the war. And so many of us know Italians in Australia whose parents came out because Italy was basically crushed, and it was reinventing itself, and it reinvented itself really remarkably, because when we think about Italy, we do think of this glamorous country. We don't really associate it with Mussolini or having sided with Hitler. We're basically easy to forget all of that in the past, not the same way that we remember Germany. And so that was really fascinating. And of course, I love fashion and glamour and all of that. So weaving that all into the story was just a lot of fun. But Veronica Gold, she was influenced probably by research I was doing when I was writing The French Agent, the masterpiece, that I kept coming across these amazing female war correspondents. There was Martha Gellhorn and Lee Miller and Virginia Cowles, and they were just such courageous, amazing women that they really inspired the main character, Veronica Gold.
Yeah, she's a great character, and like you say, the other kind of the triangle of the three men that come in is really interesting. So I guess this gets down to the question of whether you're a plotter or a pantser, but How does that kind of writing process start for you? You've got the character, do you just start and let the story take you, or are you plotting it out beforehand?
See, during COVID, I did a online master's in screenwriting.
Okay.
And since I did that course, like I just started to plan my novels a lot more meticulously. I know with the French agent, I was very nervous because I was doing a lot more plotting than I normally would. When I wrote White Gardenia, I had no idea how to write a novel. I just started and went and then got to the end
Yeah.
somehow. But I was thinking as I've grown, I've thought a lot more about technique and structure. So for this novel, I thought, okay, I'd written a plan, I'd given it to my publisher, and I thought, okay, now I just more or less follow my plan.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize I had Italian characters in this book and some very strong headed characters. They basically took over the story. They wouldn't follow the plan. The villain refused to be the villain and everything. And so I ended up just following them with my keyboard where they took. So it was a different process, but I think that was part of having developed very strong characters. And I spent a lot of time thinking about the characters before I started writing. And then they really did develop a life of their own and their own headstrong ideas about what they were going to do in the story. So the story unfolded in ways I hadn't expected it to either.
Wow. Yeah. I love that though, because like you say, all that planning and even though they did what they wanted to do,
Yep.
probably all that planning and working out the characters wasn't wasted. Like
No,
if you hadn't have done that, it wouldn't have gone the way it did. So,
yeah. One of the compliments I've been getting about it has been the twists and turns.
yes,
I think
I would
that
agree.
actually is born out of characters in conflict with each other and characters that are well developed and have very strong motives for things and very strong personalities and reasons for doing the things that they do. There's no one really vague. And they bouncing off each other create their own complications with each other and their own escalations about the things that they would do with such determination, not really thinking things through. And then that would work with, again, somebody else's personality. And so a lot of the twists and turns were not even things that I had necessarily planned, but things that came organically out of
Yeah,
just,
as a result of knowing those characters so well.
yeah,
Yeah.
really important to me in this novel because I have two very strong female characters,
Yeah.
but having the three male characters, it was really important to me to make them fully developed, complicated characters because I had got to the point where, and this is an interesting thing that I've seen change over the years, that when I was first writing historical fiction, there was often, I don't think I used it myself, but there was often some things that we'd consider dubious now. In a romantic plot line, you could have a hero keeping the heroine in a constant state of anxiety, constantly devaluing her, and sometimes even punching or breaking things to show that they were passionate about something. And all of those things are very unacceptable to us now. And when we write our female heroines, we want to give them heroes that are good men, basically, respectful men. We do feel that responsibility to our readers that we create a world where our female heroines don't accept disrespectful
Mm.
behavior. And so I wanted to write them, but I had noticed a problem in a lot of historical fiction, but also women's fiction in general. And I felt like the men were becoming bland, perhaps all the same from novel to novel, and
Yeah.
they were becoming just foils for the female characters. And Jane Tara, who is my co-host on Queens, would have late night discussions with each other, ask each other, do men really speak like this? Or do men really behave like this? Or is how we wish they would behave?
Right.
And book, I wanted the men to be good men, courageous men, but complicated men and not perfect men. So, because of that, because I spent a lot of time developing them, they actually created a lot of change and twists and turns in the novel as well. So I had 5 very strong characters work each other. Yeah,
Yeah, that must have been fun actually, to
it
be able
was
to
fun.
then just
Yeah.
put you've got all the characters and like, okay, great, let's see where we go. And one of the things that I've read that you were working with there is this idea of you having three main loves in your life. Can you expand a little bit on that idea?
Yeah, look, because we were talking about the men in the book, and I also I know, like, with romance, that a lot of people love romance for the idea that they know that a couple's going to get together. They just want to see how it works out. But I just felt I needed something different in the Italian Correspondent. And I just didn't feel satisfied with the idea of romance being predictable. While I was thinking about it, I actually spoke to Rachel Johns, and she recommended this book. And she just mentioned that she was reading a book by Kate Rose called You Only Fall in Love Three Times. And for some reason, my ear just really picked up at that because I think I've fallen in love like 100 times. And I thought, only three? And I read the book. And so the idea is that we have a spiritual journey in our romantic life. And we have these 3 big loves. So a soulmate, a karmic love, or several karmic loves, and then a twin flame. And the soulmate is a very innocent love, maybe a childhood sweetheart that you grow out of, but they always remain a fond memory or friend, lifelong friend. And the karmic loves are all the big dramatic loves with lots of problems, but lots of passion as well. And then the twin flame is a karma kind of love. And the idea is if you're in a long-term relationship, you don't have to run out and get a divorce because you think you've only had a soulmate love. It can actually take place over a long period in one relationship. You might start off like your soulmate stage when you first get married and you're running around buying IKEA furniture. And then the karmic love when teenagers are there to test your patience, a mortgage and everything else. And then you settle down and know each other. And I thought, that's really interesting. What if I gave the main character, Veronica Gold, 3 loves? But then being an author and being mischievous and wanting to up the stakes, I thought, but what if they came into her life all at once, not in chronological order as she grew? And what if it wasn't really clear which role each man was playing? And I thought that would be a good way to make it still keep a big romance line in the story, but make it unpredictable so that the reader really doesn't know who she's going to end up with.
That was a great kind of hook too, because I was really like, she's going to end up with him. No, she's going to end up with him. And it did really keep me turning the page. I mean,
Yeah.
apart from all the other great stuff that goes on in the story to do with the spy angle and Veronica's friendship with Emerald as well was
Yeah.
really interesting. Where did Emerald come from for you? How did you come about across her
Yeah,
character?
I think Emerald came from every bad boss I've ever had. I've never had a friend like Emerald, thank you, thank goodness. But yeah, she was a great villain at the end because I've been so satisfied because I really didn't like her, but I've been amazed by how many readers have told me they'd really like to have a drink with Emerald. And because she's just intriguing
Yeah.
and she's not what you expect. You think at first she's just awful, and then you realize that she has a reasoning behind what she does. And I think what really worked with her as a villain is also the complicated relationship she has with Veronica, because early on in their life, she helped Veronica in her career. And also, they were bonded because they were both young women who'd lost their mothers early. And so they have this, even though Emerald does terrible things, Veronica can't completely reject her because they've got this emotional bond. And it makes it a toxic relationship, even though we often look at Veronica and go, you should know better and stay away from Emerald. It's like a messy tie that even she can't between the two of them. And I think what works with her is I recently watched The Devil Wears Prada, and Meryl Streep just brought that character of Miranda Priestley to life
Yeah.
just so well. And I think what works with that is that Miranda just occasionally, in her cold, hard exterior, every so often just opens up a little bit. And it's so intriguing to us. We want to see, is she really that awful, or does she have a beating heart under
Yeah.
that? But as soon as you get closer, she shuts it again. It's almost like a tease. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh, okay, I think that might be why Emerald works as well. Just as you think you're getting to know Emerald, she goes and does something you don't expect her to do. And so she becomes fascinating and a bit addictive.
Yeah, she really is. And like you say, having those different layers, you're never quite sure of. So you give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm actually reading or listening to Yesteryear at the moment. I
Oh,
don't know if
yeah.
have you read it?
I haven't read it, but
No.
it's on.
And it's just
Yeah.
such the narrator, the main character, is so horrible in so many ways. But there's just things about her past and the family that she grew up in and that kind of explain
Yes.
partly why she's like she is. And so you keep thinking, you're going to see a different side of her. And so you keep reading for that to
Is she going
see.
to redeem
Yeah.
herself? Yeah, I think that's true. I think that
Yeah.
we almost want that redemption in a character, don't we? So we do
Yeah.
sort of read it. We do read villains for that reason as well. I think a villain that is just 100% horrible and doesn't have any quality that could redeem them in any way. I don't think that works so well now for modern
No, they're
audiences.
too
Maybe it
cardboard
used to.
cutout, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, just too cliched. So with your writing process, Belinda, if we talked about the plotting and pantsing and things, is it when you draft, did you just sit down and basically write from start to finish? Are you revising as you go? How does that work for you?
I should just write from start to finish. And I think that is probably the best way to write because you're discovering things. But I can't deal with mess. And if I have too much, like I know there's some authors just go from beginning to end and write a whole messy draft. And I just can't do that. So I might do a messy chapter and
Mm.
then I've got to go back and bring some craft into it. I don't think it's the most efficient way to work. I think you probably are better off just doing one messy draft. But the problem I find with that is that when I go back to revise, if it's too messy, I can't remember what I meant to happen. And I usually like to show my publisher the first 10 chapters or so, to let her know the tone that I've
Yeah.
got. And so I usually have the first 10 chapters are pretty tidy and they may change in the edit and so on. But I have a big issue with untidiness and I have a big issue with perfectionism as well. I know that I'm actually reading a really good book. I've forgotten the author, but it's called From Page One to Done. And it's really about writing the messy first draft and why
Okay.
it's important. And I would recommend it to anyone else that's struggling with it. I'm listening to it on audiobook at the moment. And I'm reminding myself that it can actually work really well. Even if you can do 3 or 4 chapters, just do them straight out and then go back and revise because she does make the point that it's not going to come out perfectly. I do think the novel is going to translate perfectly from my idea onto
Wouldn't
the
that be
page.
nice?
And it just doesn't. It really just doesn't because your brain doesn't work that way. And you have to go over something several times before you discover what the key story is.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I struggle with it.
And
I
so
have
what's that author's argument for writing from beginning to end and just doing the messy draft? What's her kind of main argument for doing that?
that it gets stuff out of your brain. And even though she's a planner, she admits to being a planner. She said that the actual writing is a discovery. Draft should be a discovery process.
Yeah.
And as you actually write, you'll discover things that work and things that don't work. And that you get a lot out of your head and onto paper. And also, it's just a faster process. The authors I know who are prepared to do that actually do write good books faster.
Mm.
Whereas I think I can write good books, but it's painfully slow process for me. It's
How long would it
exhausting.
take you from beginning to the end, say, of that kind of
Yeah, look,
draft?
including the research, it's
Yeah,
about 18 months, and I
yeah.
really should be doing it in 12. But the extra 6 months is the painful, oh my God, I can't continue unless I fix this and make it better and compare it to Tolstoy as I go along or some other impossible standard at that. Because it took 10 years to write his.
You're not taking 10 years at least.
No, no. And he had servants to do everything else, all the light stuff that
Exactly.
you don't get to do as a writer. You've got all the families to care and look after and all those other things. So it's a struggle for me, but I'm learning to let go and do the messy draft because it's working. I think it works for
Interesting.
me.
Yeah. Interesting after having written 12 books and you kind of,
Yeah, I think I'm always refining my.
me too. There's always something new to learn. Like you say,
Yeah,
like you did the masters in the screenwriting. I'm sure
yeah,
that's changed the way that you approached your writing as well.
yeah, because they do not waste a scene.
Mm,
That's what I learned from them. I really do learn things from other artists. So poets really take the time to pick the perfect word that can be very emotive. We couldn't write a whole book at the same pace that a poet writes a poem.
yeah.
So, but it is a good craft to think of. And for screenwriters, just to not waste scenes, not to have wasted scenes.
So, Belinda, over the time that you've been publishing, have you had the same publisher all of that time?
Yes.
Wow,
Yes. Our
that's great.
relationship has lasted a lot longer than a lot of marriages.
Yeah, true.
And it's got through soulmate, karmic, and twin flame.
What stage are you at
It's
now?
true. I'd say twin flame. We're pretty comfortable and we work well with each other and
Yeah.
have a level of trust.
Who is your
Yeah.
publisher?
Anna Valdinger. So
Okay.
the publishing house is the same.
Yeah.
So that's HarperCollins. Anna Valdinger has been with me since Tuscan Rose. So
Right.
since about 2010. And
Great.
my very first publisher was Linda Fennell.
Okay.
Yeah, for my
Yeah.
first few books. Yeah.
Wow. And how would you say in that time, because so that's over a fairly long period of time.
It's almost a quarter of a century.
Yes.
I feel like such a grandmother. I met Tara Moss at a writers' festival on the weekend.
Yeah.
And we're on a panel coming up at the Northern Beaches Readers Festival on longevity
Okay. That's
in
what it was.
publishing.
We're going down the same path. This is the question I was going to ask you. Yeah.
And I thought that she'd be published after me, but she was published since 1999. And I
Oh,
thought,
really?
yeah, she's really got the years on her. Not that she looks it, she still
No.
looks as fabulous as she always has. But I thought, my gosh, we really are the grandmothers of publishing
So what
industry.
year was White Gardenia published?
2002.
Okay. Yeah. You're looking really good for a granny.
Thank you.
So great segue, because what would you say have been the key things for you in maintaining a long publishing career?
Probably the same things that got me published in the first place. And that's just perseverance because I've seen it all. I've seen a lot of downturns in the publishing industry. When I was writing the Italian Correspondent, there was all the fear around AI, that we would be replaced by AI. I've seen the fear that ebooks will be the end of the
Yeah.
publishing industry. And I've just kept going and kept adapting. And things have changed. Like when I was first published, we were doing our edits on paper. How extraordinary
And
is that?
posting them back in the
Yes.
mail, right? Yeah.
And cut and paste was actually cut with a pair of scissors and sticky tape to edit your thing. And I remember one time, because you would actually have this manuscript that you'd worked months on and all little cut and paste and written on. And that was before home photocopiers were really a thing either. So I used to take it in because I wouldn't even trust the post with it. I would go in myself. But one time I was running a bit late and the publisher sent a courier, and the courier rather didn't send a van. It was like a pickup truck with no cover on the back. and just hauled my manuscript into the back like it was a bale of hay.
Oh, God.
And went driving off, and it was impending rain. And I just thought, this is going to be an Ernest Hemingway moment where this manuscript is going to get lost forever. But it made it there. But ever since that had happened, I always took the manuscript in on my own. So, but originally when I was published, there were only booksellers selling books. And I think they did so much hand selling of White Gardenia that they actually really helped me build up a readership.
Great.
And
Yeah.
so when I'm at events, I'll actually meet someone, a grandmother of the family, who gave my books to her daughter, who's now given it to her daughter. So
That's
often
fantastic.
3 generations of women who've been reading my book. And that's something I was very lucky to build up from the first part of my publishing career.
That must be so satisfying.
It is, yeah. It is really good.
Have you ever felt pressure from your publisher to write faster? You haven't really been on the book a year treadmill, really, have you? Every couple of years. Have you felt pressure to get the books out faster?
I think they would love it, but I'm actually they're supportive that the book has to be good. That's the main thing. Not good as in I can take 10 years to write,
Yes.
but no, they've been pretty good that way because they would rather have a good book than just pumping it out. And I do feel like that's been one thing that I can give my readers consistent. And yeah, so in that regard, I would be rushing it, although I'm trying, and I'm probably down to 18 months, so
Yeah.
2 years before I'll get there eventually.
But everyone has their own process. And look, some people can do a book a year and they're absolutely amazing and consistently amazing.
Yeah.
And it's just everybody has their own process, don't they?
Yes, they do. They do. I do think that, but I've got a really good publisher in that regard. They're not going to handle it, take tomfoolery from me. Remember, but they are pretty sympathetic that the book has to be good. And look, I found some real struggles along with the books, and also life happens sometime as well. And they're pretty supportive about it.
Yeah. This has been an amazing chat. And we are going to go on to just do a little bit of an extra chat if you've got time for the paid Substack subscribers. And we will be talking, if anybody who's listening to the main pod, we will be talking about some of those not so easy times perhaps Belinda's had over the span of her career, and also about some of the things in your feel-good journal, which is a completely different story to the one we've been talking about. Tune in for that if you're a paid subscriber, and sign up if you're not. Anyway, Belinda, thank you so much for joining me on the Convo couch. And yeah, I feel like we could literally talk all day.
I think so. There's so much to talk about, but thank you so much for having me.
And I'll be seeing you at Northern Beaches because I'm there as well. So Readers Festival in September.
I'll see you in person. It'll be
Yeah,
we'll
it'll
have
be great.
drinks.
Thanks, Belinda.
Thank you.